Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number WTBB1279 5x6 wide throw hinge, full mortise, standard weight, ball bearing and steel base. This is what the hinge looks like in the US 10B oil rubbed bronze finish. And let's dissect the part number a bit. WT first means wide throw. That means that the hinge is wider than it is tall. The BB means that there are two bearing packets on this hinge. Makes for a much more smoothly operating hinge and therefore door. 1279, that means a number of things. It means that it's standard weight, that the hinge leaf thickness on a 5-inch hinge like this is 145 thousandths thick. It means it's a 5-knuckle hinge. It means that it is full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves there, right here, where they're bent, or the swag, that when the leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to maintain that margin between the door and the frame, as a full mortise hinge would need to do. Also means that it's steel-based, the 1279. Standard weight, 5-knuckle, full mortise. The size on this hinge is 5x6. That means that this hinge is 5 inches wide. Pardon me. Tragic mistake. That means that this hinge is 5-inch tall. The height is always the first dimension on a hinge like this. 5-inch tall and 6-inch wide. Okay. Very important to know that the height is the first dimension. Why? Because you wouldn't want to get a 5x6 hinge ordered when you really need a 6-inch tall hinge. You're probably not going to make that mistake, but where you can make a mistake is if you are selling hollow metal doors and frames and your client wants 5 by 4.5 inch hinges, and you're thinking, well, okay, a 5-inch wide hinge. No, the doors and frames have to be prepped for 5-inch tall hinges, and then they want a 4.5 inch width. Now, not uncommon, because a 4.5 by 4.5 would be a common hinge, but the ability of a hinge that's just a 1/2 inch taller at 5-inch to do the work of hanging a door and allowing it to operate is actually significantly higher when it's a taller hinge. A more common scenario might be an aluminum storefront door where you've got a 4.5 by 4 hinge, a 4.5 tall and 4-inch wide. That's very common. So those are some reasons why it's really important to know that the height is the first dimension and then the width. So it's the opposite of what you would, categorize a door as. A door would be the width first as well. WT in the part number, that inherently means wide throw. If you skip the wide throw, the WT in the part number, you could not have 5x6. If it was just a BB1279, it would be a 5x5 or a 6x6. It'd be a square hinge. There is information below this video, and let's go over it all now, what we've already not covered. Steel hinge, it is made of steel with a steel pin, 145 thousandths thick, which is considered standard weight. Standard weight is important to understand because there are different classifications of hinges. Residential weight, which are about 96 thousandths of an inch thick. There is standard weight, which is about 134 thousandths thick, plus or minus, depending on the size of the hinge. And then there's heavyweight, which is about 180 thousandths thick, depending on the size of the hinge. This is a standard weight 5-inch, which means it's going to be about 134 thousandths, depending on the size. 5-inch makes it 145 thousandths thick. Ball bearings, because it's a standard weight, it will only have 2 bearing packets. If it was a residential duty, it would have 2. If it was a heavyweight, it would have 4 bearing packets in all 4 joints of the knuckles. Button tip and plug, just common button tip. You can do decorative tips on a hinge like this. Okay. Now, when it comes to the tips, you can also do a variety of decorative tips beyond what is called the button tip. You just use your imagination. That somewhat looks like a button on your shirt. You can do ball tips. the common one after. The most common of all decorative tips are ball tips. Urn tip, steeple tip, acorn tip, all of that can be done. Other specialty situations you can do, radiused corners, that would be very unusual, but it can be done, radiused corners. You can do a variety of security options, like a security stud where you've got a block of steel that's here, so that when the leaves closed, that block of steel will fit into a hole drilled here so that you really can't separate those leaves apart. You can also do the far more common security pin hinge, which is certainly what you would want if you have an exterior outswinging door. There is a link below this video to a document called Template, and that's very handy because it will show you the dimensional properties of the hinge, but specifically where they apply to the location of the holes for the screws. And speaking of screws, screws are included in a complementary finish. If you're replacing hinges, you will certainly want to review all that information first to make sure that the location of these holes are exactly where you expect them to be when you get the new hinges. Hinges like this are generally quite made to order and very non-returnable sorts of one-off type hinges. So if you have any reason to question what you're doing, reach out to us. Let's work together to eliminate the guesswork. But in terms of the hole locations, they're detailed on that page called Template. On that template, there will be a variety of other part numbers mentioned because the location of the screw holes is somewhat independent of the actual part number, and also the size as well. You'll see the F dimension, which will give you the length of the leaf from where the swag is out to the outside edge, but those locations for the holes are referred to on the bottom, from the bottom leaf. So that's a handy document to have. Then, moving through the extended description additionally, medium weight doors requiring medium to low frequency use. Wide throw hinges are really not load rated hinges at all. So if it's questionable what you're hanging with it in terms of weight or volume, I mean, I really wouldn't hesitate to hang something that's, 150 pounds using 3 hinges. If it got north of 200, I would certainly add hinges, or I would use a thicker hinge as well, is what I would do. This being a wide throw hinge, you're probably going to be using it for a special sort of circumstance. Now, wide throw hinges, why do you use them? Where would you use them? You wouldn't just order it because you want it. That would be, there's not a reason for that. Meaning that your application or something about your installation is going to require that you literally move the vertical axis of pivoting out that additional ½ of an inch. If this was a standard 5x5 hinge and you went to a 5x6, you're going to kick it out ½ of an inch, the vertical axis of pivoting. Meaning so that when you get the door open, you're going to achieve a 1 inch greater clearance over the standard hinge. Okay? What would cause you to need that? A variety of factors. None of them are most common per se, but here are some situations. You have a condition where the frame is installed in a wall, and the reveal between the face of the wall and the vertical axis of pivoting is insufficient to allow you to get that door to open maybe to 180 degrees, or well far back. The frame might be kicked into the point where the vertical axis of pivoting, even when you open the hinge up, does not allow that door to get out and around. Okay, so you might want to move that out a little bit. You could have a scenario by which you've got a standard installation, but a similar condition, as I just mentioned, where someone's taken concrete block and then run drywall in the face and then back to the frame. Something could have been done to an otherwise standard installation to force a wide throw hinge. You could also have a circumstance where you have a treatment to the exterior wall, like shutters, let's say. You could have a 2 1/4 inch thick wood door on the front of your house, but you could have a specially thick brick mold installed, and you want that vertical axis of pivoting to be pushed off and out around, or to accommodate that unusually thick brick mold or maybe shutters, you might need a wide throw hinge. You could also have a circumstance where the inset of the door is greater than standard, meaning when you stand on the pull side of the door and you run your hand over the face of the door and the frame, you'll notice that the door is always kicked in, not always, but sometimes, most of the time, moved in a little bit, like 3/32 of an inch, but not always. It could be flush. Well, imagine if that condition was an inch. The door is actually physically recessed further in than a standard application would be. Now, you don't see that often, but you do see it. The old homes, 150-year-old homes that are 2 or 3 story tall, will have unusually thick walls to carry the weight of the house above it. Not uncommon to see a 12-inch deep wood frame, and not uncommon to see those doors installed in the center of that 12-inch frame. And sure enough, you see gigantic wide throw hinges, because the client would have wanted the doors. Well, first of all, if you have that condition, you're not even going to get the hinge to sit properly, because the barrel of the hinge is going to come in premature contact with the jamb. You literally need a much wider hinge to be able to mortise the entire jamb to kick the vertical axis of pivoting off the face of the frame, so that it'll work to the point where the client, when this home was built in 1870, could have taken those doors and gotten them out past maybe all the way to 180 degrees. Another circumstance, which happens to be the circumstance where the client has purchased these hinges, is they have, and I've seen this application, a loading dock door assembly in New York City, Central Park South, a business, because space is at such a premium. Same application for this client, has doors, and in the New York City example, there were 4 doors. The client where these are going to has 3 doors, same principle. The leading edge, the outside door, the client wanted that door to fold against the middle door or the second door. No problem, standard hinge. But now he wanted to take all this and fold it back, and then in the case of New York City, to fold that back, that 4th door even back against the wall. So what someone did is they laid out the clearance between the face of each door and what it would take to get all of these gorgeous doors. They weren't gorgeous, they were just hollow metal doors. Not a big deal. To get them stacked, like that. And it worked out splendidly for them when there were literally just 4 panels, so that when you unfolded all of them, they could then just lock them as they know. I don't know what lock they used. They could have used they could have used just a padlock for that application, but I doubt it. They likely would have used a perhaps something like a hook bolt, something that you would otherwise see installed on an aluminum storefront, which they do make those for hollow metal, where you could come up and hook to the jamb so that you couldn't separate the door at all, because you would need some way to positively engage that door, because you could literally have, well, anyway, the point of who knows what lock they were using, I don't recall. But unusual scenarios might call for a wide throw hinge as well. Okay, it was great. That New York City example was superb. Now, the client that's getting these hinges, he has 3 leafs on a shed. It's like a barn shed door. Total of 6 doors. The first set, fold out, and then fold out again. So we can get his, I forget the width of the opening, but it might have been 14 feet, and he had a total of 6 doors that were kind of evenly separated there. So he was able to build this scenario, and he's exceptionally thick, like 2 3/4 inch thick doors. So he's able to stack those doors in such a way that it would work. And we've got some 4.5 by 6s, we've got some 5 by 6s, we've got some 6 by 6s on this job. And the reason he was doing the unusual heights is because you wanted a taller hinge to hang those outside leaves, because those will ultimately bear everything. But he was also going to tailor the back set, where he's going to physically mortise them to the edge of the door, so that the 6-inch width, which was uniform on the 3 different heights that he had, he was going to compensate by how far the back set was of the edge of the door that was not chiseled, is how he was going to account for that. If you maintained a solid or a constant back set everywhere on all the mortising, you would then certainly have to play with the width of the hinge. This just happened to be how he went about doing it, because I think his scenario would have been outrageously thick on the outside leaves to get those doors stacked together. Anyway, lots of reasons why you might need a wide throw. Oh, if you're also thinking about wide throw hinges, you might want to consider the possibility of needing an extended lip strike plate. Sometimes, especially in that drywall return scenario, an extended lip strike makes a lot of sense, because if your door closes, you don't want the latch prematurely hitting the face of the drywall or the wall treatment prior to it hitting the architectural hardware. Now, the name Hager, synonymous with all things hinge related. Their namesake is, after all, Hager Hinge. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Hager, this is their part number WTBB1279 5x6 wide throw hinge, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.